welcome. I'm Tafaragadamu. Over the weekend, an earthquake with a magnitude of 4.9 occurred in Ethiopia at the very heart of the Afar Depression, just 160 kilometers from Addis Ababa. The tremors were felt in the capital and a few other towns. What happened? Joining me to shed light on the event is Professor Atalay Ayele, a seismologist and also a professor of geophysics at the Institute of Geophysics, Space Science and Astronomy of the Addis Ababa University. A very warm welcome to the program, Professor Atalay.
Thank you for having me.
So this earthquake happened at the heart of the Afar Depression, correct?
Not quite the heart of Afar Depression, but this is just southern Afar. Mm-hmm. Between two volcanoes called the Atalay and Dofan volcanoes, just southeastern part of the Angkor and Aliyamba region. So the heart of Afar is a little bit further up north. So
the magnitude is 4.9 the Richter scale?
Yeah, the magnitude, it was first reported to be 4.9, but now, that's always the case. The first glance always the draft analysis, but now we come to know that the magnitude is about 5.3.
5.3.
Yeah.
It is still moderate, right? It's not really harsh.
Yeah, it's still moderate, but it can distract if it happens close to an important infrastructure. Still, it can cause distraction.
Like, can you explain a bit more?
5.3, if it happens like in a 10-kilometer range, 20-kilometer range to like a skyscraper building, high-rise building, it can cause collapse.
You mean from the epicenter, right?
From the epicenter, yeah. So even magnitude 3.5 or 4. If it happens nearby Addis Ababa, for instance, it can cause a lot of destruction.
But it's interesting. It is 160 kilometers or nearly so from the epicenter here in Addis Ababa. And I barely felt it in my part of the town, which is downtown Addis. But in several locations across town, it was really felt, and people had to leave their apartments and get themselves to the streets to avoid any damage.
Yes, even people living in Addis, it depends where they are. Some people who have been just on the ground, if the ground is a sediment fill, like a lake bed or soft soil or ground, it has the power of amplifying the amplitude, and they can feel it. And if people are in multi-story buildings, like 10th floor or something, or especially people living in condominium houses, like 4th floors, 3rd floor, they were the one who really felt the earthquake much, especially in the Ayat area.
Well, it went on for a few seconds, right?
Yeah, the duration of the vibration or the wave is like a couple of seconds for this magnitude earthquake. But if it is like magnitude 7, 7.58, the duration increases also accordingly. But I think what people reported in this special, so far the maximum magnitude recorded is the one that happened the day before yesterday, which is 5.3. That's kind of like the duration is 2 seconds or so. I think that's what people reported, that they felt terrible feeling, which lasted about 2 seconds. So
2 seconds.
That's it.
So what caused this earthquake? Is it tectonic plate movements? Is it because we found ourselves in the fault lines?
Yeah, in this part of the region that is where the East African Rift is located, the East African Rift is one of the best world-class continental rift which is active. And the Ethiopian Rift and Afar is part of the East African Rift. So we humans, we don't notice For instance, if you observe the Ntoto mountain range and where this is located, actually, you just, when you descend in Ntoto, you are just starting the Rift Valley. So over the geological time scale, the motion of the Earth goes in its own way, by its own pace. People will not notice. So the occurrence of earthquakes, volcanic eruption, or intrusion of molten material into the crust, which happens rarely or once in a while, that's how it happens, slowly and slowly and slowly. If we locate all locations of earthquakes that we have recorded so far, it exactly matches the rift floor. So this is one of justification that we are hosting an active rift in Ethiopia, the main Ethiopian rift. So that's because of the tectonic
So basically,
plate. Yeah, please.
So basically, we were not caught by surprise. This is part of the seismic activity that we see in this part of the world.
Yes, since we started recording earthquake activities or volcanism, it's like about 100 years. Mm-hmm. But these natural phenomena have been going on in the geological past, when the human race was not able to record it. Mm-hmm. But it was happening with its pace. But now we start to be cautious because technology is advancing. The technology of recording those activities is increasing from time to time. And we are now observing almost every episode, every tremor is being captured. For instance, a magnitude 3 earthquake, if it happens in Afar, we can see it in Addis Ababa with our equipment. But no one will feel it in Addis, neither in Afar even. No one would notice that earthquake.
So were you able to predict this earthquake? Because as I can understand it, you are talking about a pattern.
No, it's not easy to predict. By the way, so far in today's technology, no matter where you are, even the most advanced countries like the US and Japan, which are prone to earthquake disaster, so far they are not able to predict earthquakes. Because since the process of the earthquake rupture process or the preparation for an earthquake occurrence happens beneath the surface of the earth, it is very difficult to detect or observe or be able to capture some data in some form. But when it comes to weather, for instance, weather forecast on daily basis, hourly basis, we can capture data like humidity, wind direction, so on and so forth, using balloons, aircrafts, and also like barometers. Any meteorological instrument can detect something. But when it comes to earthquake, we need to be able to notice. However, animals can detect like few minutes before the occurrence of a huge rupture, because they hear a very, very disturbing noise, which we humans can't hear. So if there are flocks of rats or mice or whatever, even elephants or even snakes in such a neighborhood, in a room, they panic and they disappear because they are disturbed so much by the noise generated by the earthquake process. But we humans don't feel that noise. Otherwise, there is many other way of predicting earthquake. And this one is a little bit not quite scientific enough. Yeah. People are still trying to do that.
In this case, you cannot talk about an early warning architecture, no.
Well, in Japan, for instance, they do, because sorry, the Japanese government, because these people are exposed to earthquake disasters so much, and also the disasters are cascaded. It's like the Tohoku case. An earthquake can generate tsunami. The tsunami can risk nuclear reactor, so it's a cascaded geohazard. So they invest a lot of money to have a huge number of seismic networks all over the country. So the seismic wave, there is what we call the P wave and the shear wave. So always the time difference between these waves will tell you the distance where it comes from. So they have such an automated system immediately after the P wave arrives, which is less distractive. They have an alarm. They put the siren on just like in a minute or a couple of minutes,
right,
to take action. And this is they are trained for it even in school, in curricula. So that's the only way they can use a kind of alarm system as such. Otherwise, it's very difficult. Even you will be able to predict in some ways. The prediction, that means that you have to be able to tell what size of earthquake, which part of the world, your country, whatever, valley or mountain, at what time, what magnitude. So you should be able, when you predict, you should be able to tell these details,
right,
which is very difficult to know.
right.
So the panic you induced by making unrealistic prediction will cause much more damage than the earthquake itself. So it's very discouraging. So at this point, it's very difficult to predict.
It's interesting. Yeah.
But so people, when we tell them, like, what's your profession? It's a seismologist. So what do you do? We record earthquakes and do research. Can you predict? No. So what's the point?
So, of course, they are right. It's a very difficult job for us,
yeah,
seismologists.
Yes. So, but what's the benefit is two things. One, we map in space and time which part of a certain country of interest the earthquakes frequent.
Right.
How frequently does big earthquakes occur? Which part of the Ethiopian rift, for instance? So that data will be analyzed, and we produce the hazard map of the country, which is the major input to building code of countries. Okay. So if you have infrastructure to be developed in Addis Ababa or in Adama or whatever, that map will be able to help the engineers what structures they should design, so that to be able to resist the earthquake damage.
Interesting.
So that's one thing.
One thing, yeah.
Yeah. The second is, the second is, when it occurs, I will be able to tell, for instance, where the earthquake occurred, how big it was. I will advise my government, for instance, or the disaster risk commission of the country, what happened in like an hour ago or 2 hours ago or something. This size of earthquakes happened in this area, so logistics and all possible mechanisms will be mobilized to that area to save human life and property. So these are the kind of benefits.
You mentioned this infrastructures early on. I'm interested to know what happens to some of the mega projects that this country is undertaking. What comes to mind is the Great Ethiopian Renaissance Dam. Is that out of this rift system, or is it somehow affected by this tremor?
Yeah, absolutely. It's the good location is it's like about 500 kilometers air distance. It is not pass distance. 500 kilometers far away from the active rift, the main Ethiopian rift. And also the basement of the dam is a granitic rock, very strong. So it doesn't affect these activities that we normally record in the Ethiopian rift, will not affect the GERD at all. In general, the active rift has nothing to do with the GERD safety. It's very far away.
You have an institute at the Addis Ababa University. Can you say something about that?
The institute, formerly it was called the Geophysical Observatory. But like about 10 years ago or so, it is transformed to the Institute of Geophysics, Space Science and Astronomy. So this observatory has been recording earthquakes for the last over 60 years. Probably, I think it is the first research institute in the country, research in the modern context. We run some seismic network, state-of-the-art seismic stations. That means we are third world countries, and we are not running the third class instrument, but it's a world class instrument, but there are not many in number. So we have a real-time system. The data comes in automatically into our server, and we look at what's happening. And so we also get data from Djibouti, Kenya and Uganda live. We get live from data repositories. So literally our institute is monitoring the Horn of Africa almost. So we have that capability, but we need more. I mean, we have to be strengthened.
For sure.
More manpower, more equipment, and more support. I think that's really important.
Thank you very much, Professor Atalay. It was really a pleasure having you on my show amidst your very busy schedule. You are now attending a conference.
Yes.
Obviously for the next few days. So it's great to have you on the show.
Thank you very much for having me too.